Welcome to a story that will leave you questioning assumptions, challenging biases, and exploring the strength it takes to stand tall in the face of injustice. This is the story of Alexis Monroe, a self-made billionaire, and an ordinary shopping trip that turned into an extraordinary moment of reckoning. Set in the bustling streets of New York City, this narrative unfolds in 5 gripping chapters, taking you from a quiet beginning to a climax that will redefine what it means to lead with dignity and purpose. Let's begin. The air was brisk and crisp as the first rays of sunlight danced across Manhattan's iconic skyline. Alexis Monroe, dressed in simple yoga pants, sneakers, and a denim jacket, strolled through the quiet streets of Soho. Beside her, holding her hand tightly, was her 7-year-old niece, Lily. The duo made their way to Regent & Company, a luxury department store famous for its towering glass facade and an assortment of exclusive designer goods. For most, shopping at Regent was a rare occasion. But for Alexis, it was part of her routine. As the CEO and owner of the franchise, she made unannounced visits to ensure her stores upheld the high standards she demanded. "Auntie Lex," Lily piped up as they approached the grand entrance. "Are we going to buy something fun today?" Alexis smiled warmly, squeezing Lily's small hand. "We'll see, sweetheart. But first, I need to check on a few things." The revolving doors of Regent & Company spun open, and the pair stepped into a world of polished marble, shimmering chandeliers, and soft instrumental music. Alexis breathed in the familiar scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting from the in-store cafe. But her sharp eyes darted around, already assessing the store's layout and energy. It didn't take long for Alexis to notice the subtle shift in the air. Employees cast quick glances in her direction, their expressions ranging from surprise to suspicion. She was used to this, dressed in unassuming attire. She didn't exactly look like the typical Regent & Company clientele. "Auntie Lex, why is everyone looking at us like that?" Lily whispered, clinging closer to her. Alexis knelt down to Lily's eye level. "Sometimes, people make assumptions, Lily, but it's our actions that show who we really are, not what others think about us. Remember that." Lily nodded, her curiosity momentarily satisfied. As they wandered further into the store, Alexis carefully observed the way her employees interacted with customers and each other. It was all part of her management style, leading from the ground up. As they approached the accessories section, Alexis stopped to admire a sleek black leather handbag displayed on a glass pedestal. It was a limited edition piece, priced at nearly $5. She leaned closer, inspecting a scuff mark on the handle. Her brow furrowed slightly. It was a detail that shouldn't have been overlooked. "Excuse me, ma'am," a sharp voice interrupted. Alexis turned to find a young store associate, her arms crossed and her expression stiff. The woman's name tag read Chloe Green, floor supervisor. "Yes," Alexis replied evenly, her eyes meeting Chloe's without hesitation. "I'd appreciate it if you didn't touch the merchandise unless you're serious about buying it," Chloe said, her tone bordering on condescending. Lily tugged at Alexis's hand, her innocent gaze flickering between her aunt and Chloe. Alexis remained composed, placing the bag back on its pedestal with deliberate care. "I wasn't planning on buying it," Alexis said, her tone calm but firm. "But I think you should know that scuff marks like these shouldn't be on display. It reflects poorly on your store's standards." Chloe's eyes narrowed, her skepticism evident. "We take great care of our merchandise." "Ma'am, are you sure you didn't?" "Excuse me," Alexis interrupted, her voice carrying an edge now. Before the situation could escalate further, Lily spoke up. "Auntie Lex, Can I get that candy over there? She pointed toward a colorful display of chocolates near the checkout counters. Alexis smiled down at her niece, her expression softening. Of course. Let's go. As they walked toward the candy section, Alexis couldn't shake the uneasy feeling that Chloe's eyes were still on them. Lily carefully selected a chocolate bar, clutching it excitedly in her small hands. Alexis led her toward the checkout, but as they passed through the exit sensors, a piercing alarm suddenly blared, freezing them both in their tracks. Stop right there. Chloe's voice cut through the air, sharp and authoritative. All eyes turned toward Alexis and Lily. The store fell silent except for the shrill alarm echoing off the walls. What's going on? Alexis asked, keeping her voice steady despite the knot forming in her stomach. Chloe marched toward them, flanked by 2 uniformed security guards. Mom, I need to see your bag. The sensors went off, which means you've taken something without paying for it. Lily's wide, panicked eyes filled with tears. Auntie Lex, I didn't mean to. Alexis knelt beside Lily, her voice gentle as she reassured her. It's okay, sweetheart, it was an accident. But as she rose to face Chloe, her demeanor shifted. This is a misunderstanding, Alexis said firmly. My niece forgot to pay for her candy. That's all. Chloe folded her arms, her lips curling into a thin smile. We'll see about that. Open your bag, please. Alexis stared at Chloe for a long moment, her mind racing. Around her, customers murmured, some pulling out their phones to record the unfolding scene. The weight of judgment bore down on her, but Alexis refused to let it crush her. You're making a mistake, she said, her voice low but unwavering. Then you won't mind cooperating. Chloe replied smugly, gesturing for the guards to inspect Alexis's belongings. As the tension in the store reached a boiling point, Alexis felt the first stirrings of something deeper, a resolve to confront this injustice head-on. And so began a battle that would not only test her patience but also reveal the courage it takes to demand respect in a world eager to deny it. The store buzzed with whispers and muted gasps as customers gawked at the unfolding scene. Some reached for their phones, eager to record the confrontation. Alexis could feel dozens of eyes on her, their judgment palpable. She glanced down at Lily, who clung tightly to her leg, her small frame trembling in fear. It's okay, Lily, Alexis whispered, her voice soft but firm. We'll sort this out. Chloe stood with her arms crossed, radiating smug authority. The 2 security guards flanked her, their expressions stern but uncertain. Alexis reached into her handbag, retrieving her wallet and keys before setting the bag on the counter. Feel free to search, Alexis said, her voice calm but cutting. You won't find anything except my belongings. One of the guards hesitated, his gaze flickering toward Chloe. Go ahead, Chloe snapped, her tone impatient. She set off the alarm. Didn't she? The guard reluctantly unzipped the bag, rifling through its contents. As expected, there was nothing suspicious. He glanced at Chloe and shook his head. Mom, he began. There's nothing. That's not all. Chloe interrupted, her tone sharp. What about the candy bar? Alexis crouched down to Lily's level. Sweetheart, can you show the nice man what you're holding? Lily sniffled, her face streaked with tears, and held out the small chocolate bar. The guard took it gently, turning it over in his hands before setting it on the counter. She forgot to pay for this, Alexis explained. It was a mistake. Chloe narrowed her eyes. A mistake? That's convenient. What if she forgot about something else? That's enough, Alexis snapped, her composure finally cracking. You've searched my bag, and you've seen the candy bar. There's nothing else. The murmurs in the crowd grew louder. Someone whispered, "Why is she making such a big deal out of this?" Another voice chimed in, "Probably can't afford anything here." Alexis's jaw tightened. She turned to the security guards. Her tone firm, "Are we done here?" Before either guard could respond, the store manager, Evan Richards, arrived, dressed in a tailored suit. His expression was a mix of concern and annoyance. "What's going on here?" Evan demanded, his gaze flicking between Chloe, Alexis, and the growing crowd. Chloe wasted no time. This woman triggered the security alarm and refused to cooperate. "That's not true," Alexis interjected. "My niece accidentally carried the candy bar past the register. I was explaining that when your staff escalated the situation." Evan raised an eyebrow, his skeptical gaze settling on Alexis's casual outfit. "Do you have a receipt for the candy bar?" Alexis exhaled sharply, her patience wearing thin. "I didn't get the chance to pay because your employee jumped to conclusions." Lily whimpered, burying her face in Alexis's leg. Evan sighed, pinching the bridge of his nose. "Mom, store policy requires that we report incidents like this. I'm afraid I'll have to involve the police." The words hung heavy in the air. Alexis felt her stomach drop. Not for herself but for Lily, who was now sobbing uncontrollably. "You're calling the police over a candy bar?" Alexis asked incredulously. "It's standard procedure," Evan said, his tone devoid of empathy. The tension in the store reached a boiling point. The crowd's whispers turned into outright commentary. "This is ridiculous," one woman muttered. "It's just a candy bar. She probably stole more," another voice countered. Alexis squared her shoulders, standing taller than ever. "Go ahead and call them," she said, her voice icy. "But when they get here, you'll regret this decision." The murmurs quieted as Evan hesitated, clearly thrown off by Alexis's confidence. But Chloe was undeterred, already pulling out her phone to dial. Minutes later, the flashing lights of a police cruiser reflected off the store's glass facade. Two officers stepped inside, their presence adding weight to an already tense situation. The taller officer, Detective Brian Carter, approached with practiced calm. His partner, Officer Megan Hall, trailed closely behind, her notepad ready. "Who's in charge here?" Carter asked, his gaze sweeping over the crowd. Evan stepped forward, gesturing toward Alexis. "This woman triggered our security alarm and refused to cooperate. We suspect she may have attempted to steal merchandise." Alexis's lips pressed into a thin line. "That's not what happened," she said firmly. Carter turned to her, his expression neutral. "Mom, may I see some identification?" Alexis handed over her ID without hesitation. The detective studied it, his brow furrowing slightly as he read her name. "Alexis Monroe," he said slowly, as if the name sounded familiar. "Yes," Alexis replied, her tone calm but pointed. "And if you look into that name, you'll realize how big of a mistake this is." Carter exchanged a glance with Officer Hall, who quietly stepped aside to check the name in their database. Evan and Chloe stood stiffly, clearly unaware of who they were dealing with. The crowd remained glued to the scene, their curiosity mounting. "What exactly are you implying?" Evan asked, his tone laced with irritation. Alexis met his gaze head-on. "I'm implying that you've made a grave error in judgment." As Carter waited for his partner to return, he asked Alexis to explain the situation. She recounted the events clearly and concisely, her voice unwavering. Finally, Officer Hall returned, her expression a mixture of disbelief and discomfort. She whispered something into Carter's ear, and his demeanor shifted. Carter straightened, handing Alexis's ID back with a small nod. "Mom, I think we may have some clarifying to do. What's going on? Chloe demanded, her voice rising with frustration. Alexis folded her arms, her gaze cold. Why don't you ask your boss? Carter turned to Evan and Chloe, his expression serious. Do you have any idea who this woman is? Before they could respond, Alexis decided it was time to take control of the narrative. I am Alexis Monroe, she said, her voice ringing out for everyone to hear. Owner and CEO of Regent & Company, the very store you're standing in. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Evan's face went pale, and Chloe's smug confidence evaporated. The revelation hit like a thunderclap, setting the stage for what would come next. The silence that followed Alexis's declaration was deafening. Chloe's jaw dropped, her face flushing a deep shade of red. Evan shifted uncomfortably, tugging at the cuffs of his tailored suit as if they were choking him. The murmurs from the crowd quickly morphed into audible gasps and whispers. She owns the store, someone muttered. No way, she doesn't look like a CEO. Another voice chimed in, laden with disbelief. Alexis didn't flinch under their scrutiny. She stood tall, her piercing gaze locked on Evan and Chloe, daring them to speak. Detective Carter cleared his throat, cutting through the tension. Mr. Richards, he said, addressing Evan, is it true? Is Ms. Monroe the owner of this establishment? Evan swallowed hard, his professional veneer cracking. Yes, she is, he admitted reluctantly, his voice barely above a whisper. Chloe's eyes widened in panic. I didn't know, she stammered, her earlier arrogance replaced with nervous energy. She didn't say who she was. Alexis took a slow, deliberate step forward, her voice calm but razor sharp. So, let me get this straight. My niece accidentally carried a candy bar past the register. And your first instinct was to humiliate me publicly, accuse me of theft, and call the police, all without verifying who I am or considering a simple explanation. Chloe opened her mouth to respond but faltered under Alexis's glare. It's standard procedure, Evan interjected, his voice shaky. We treat all theft accusations seriously, regardless of who the person is. Alexis turned to him, her expression hardening. Standard procedure, do your procedures also include assuming guilt based on how someone looks? Because that's exactly what happened here. The weight of her words hung in the air, and the crowd grew uncomfortably quiet. I didn't mean, Chloe began. But Alexis held up a hand to stop her. Save it, Alexis said coldly. This isn't just about me. It's about the culture you've fostered in this store. A culture where employees feel empowered to treat certain customers as second-class citizens. And as the CEO of this company, I take responsibility for that. Evan's face turned beet red, his discomfort evident. Ms. Monroe, if I may. No, Alexis cut him off, her voice firm. You may not. What you can do is gather your staff in the conference room in an hour. We're having a meeting. She turned to Detective Carter, her tone softening slightly. Thank you, Detective. I believe we've resolved this matter. Carter nodded, clearly relieved to be stepping out of the spotlight. If you need anything further, Ms. Monroe, don't hesitate to call. As the officers departed, Alexis knelt down beside Lily, who was still clutching her hand. It's over now, sweetheart, she said gently. Are you okay? Lily sniffled, her wide eyes looking up at her aunt. I was so scared, Auntie Lex. Alexis pulled her into a comforting hug. You were very brave. I'm proud of you. She straightened, her resolve hardening as she addressed the gathered crowd. This isn't just about what happened to me today. It's about something bigger, something that happens to people every day. If you've ever been treated unfairly because of how you look, know this, You deserve better. And I will make sure that happens here. The crowd began to disperse. Some still whispering in disbelief. Others nodding in quiet support. An hour later, Alexis stood at the head of the sleek conference room. Her presence commanding the attention of every store employee. Evan and Chloe sat near the front. Their expressions a mix of guilt and apprehension. This morning was a wake-up call. Alexis began, her tone measured but firm. Not just for me, but for all of you. The events that unfolded in this store were unacceptable. And if I, as the CEO, can experience this kind of treatment, what does that say about how we treat everyday customers? The room remained silent, the weight of her words sinking in. I built Regent & Company with the vision of creating a space where everyone feels valued, where excellence and respect are at the forefront of everything we do. But today, I saw cracks in that foundation. And those cracks are a reflection of my own failure to ensure this culture permeates every level of our organization. Evan shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ms. Monroe, I'm not finished, Alexis said, cutting him off. Her gaze swept across the room. Effective immediately, we will be implementing mandatory training for all employees. Focusing on cultural sensitivity, implicit bias, and customer service excellence. This is non-negotiable. Chloe raised a tentative hand. Will this include management? Especially management, Alexis replied, her tone icy. Because leadership sets the tone for everyone else. If the tone is disrespectful, then the entire culture becomes toxic. The employees exchanged uneasy glances. But Alexis wasn't done. Furthermore, any employee who cannot align with the core values of this company, respect, integrity, and inclusivity, will no longer have a place here. A murmur rippled through the room. But no one dared to voice their dissent. Evan raised his hand cautiously. Ms. Monroe, I want to apologize for what happened today. It was a failure on our part. And I take full responsibility. Alexis nodded, her expression softening slightly. Apologies are a start, Mr. Richards. But actions speak louder. I'll be monitoring this store closely in the coming weeks to ensure real change happens. I expect your full cooperation. Yes, ma'am, Evan said, his voice subdued. Chloe looked as though she wanted to sink into her chair. Her earlier bravado completely gone. Alexis scanned the room one last time. You all have the power to make Regent & Company a place people love and trust. It starts here, and it starts now. Let's get to work. As Alexis exited the conference room, Lily ran up to her, holding the hand of a young sales associate who had been watching her during the meeting. Are you done saving the day, Auntie Lex? Lily asked, her tone lighter now that the tension had passed. Alexis crouched down, ruffling Lily's hair. Not quite, sweetheart. There's still more to do. But we're on the right track. In that moment, Alexis felt a flicker of hope. Change was never easy, but it was always worth fighting for. In the days following the incident at Regent & Company, Alexis Monroe set the wheels of change in motion. The training programs she had announced were fast-tracked, with a team of diversity and inclusion specialists brought in to lead the effort. Emails rolled out to employees across the company, outlining the new expectations and emphasizing the importance of fostering respect and empathy at every level of the organization. But not everyone embraced the changes. Some employees viewed the training sessions as unnecessary, while others whispered about Alexis's decision to single out the store for its failures. Resistance brewed beneath the surface, and Alexis knew it wouldn't be easy to win everyone over. The first training session at the Soho store was held in a large meeting room, where employees sat in rows of folding chairs. Chloe and Evan were among them. their postures stiff as the facilitator introduced the session. "Today, we're here to have an honest conversation," the facilitator began, "about biases, about assumptions, and about how we treat people, our customers and each other." Alexis sat quietly at the back of the room, observing. She wanted to hear firsthand what her employees thought. And more importantly, she wanted him to feel seen and heard. "Let's start with this," the facilitator said, projecting a question onto the screen at the front of the room. "What assumptions do you make about someone based on how they look?" The room was silent. Employees exchanged uneasy glances, no one wanting to be the first to speak. Finally, a young cashier named Maya raised her hand. "I guess, sometimes I assume people wearing expensive clothes are going to buy more," she admitted, "and that people who look like they don't belong here might be trouble." "Thank you for your honesty, Maya," the facilitator said, nodding. "Those are assumptions many of us make, even if we don't realize it. But how do you think those assumptions affect the people we're serving?" Maya hesitated, then said quietly, "Probably makes them feel like they're not welcome." "Exactly," the facilitator replied. "Now, how can we change that?" The discussion slowly gained momentum as other employees began sharing their thoughts. Even Chloe, though reluctant at first, admitted that she had acted impulsively during the incident with Alexis. "I didn't know who she was," Chloe said, her voice trembling slightly, "but that's not an excuse. I should have treated her with respect, no matter what." Alexis watched from the back, her expression unreadable. Chloe's words were a step in the right direction, but they were only the beginning. After the session ended, Alexis lingered in the meeting room, reviewing feedback forms from the employees. To her surprise, Evan approached her, his hands clasped nervously in front of him. "Ms. Monroe," he began, clearing his throat, "I wanted to speak with you." Alexis gestured for him to sit. "Go ahead." Evan hesitated, then said, "I've worked at Regent & Company for over a decade. I've always thought I understood what this company stood for. But after what happened last week, I realized I've been blind to a lot of things." Alexis raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Such as?" Evan sighed. "The way we train our staff. The way we handle situations with customers. I've always followed policy, but I never stopped to think about the impact those policies have on people. What happened with you and Lily, it shouldn't have happened. And I want to help make sure it doesn't happen again." Alexis studied him for a moment, weighing his sincerity. "That's a good start, Mr. Richards. But talk is cheap. I need action." Evan nodded firmly. "I'm ready to act. Whatever you need me to do, I'll do it." "Good," Alexis said, her tone softening slightly, "because we have a lot of work to do." Meanwhile, news of the incident had spread beyond the walls of Regent & Co. Social media was abuzz with heated debates about what had happened. Some users praised Alexis for addressing the issue head-on, while others criticized her as being too harsh on her employees. One viral post read, "If the CEO of Regent & Company can be treated this way, imagine how they treat ordinary people. Boycott until they fix their culture." Another countered, "This is just corporate theater. Let's see if anything actually changes." Despite the noise, Alexis remained steadfast. She refused to let the controversy derail her efforts. Instead, she doubled down on transparency, inviting journalists to cover the changes being implemented at Regent & Company. A week later, Alexis sat in the studio of a major news network, ready to give her first televised interview since the incident. The host, a seasoned journalist named Diane Parker, greeted her warmly before the cameras started rolling. "Ms. Monroe, thank you for being here," Diane began. The incident at your Soho store has sparked national attention. How do you feel about the way it's been portrayed in the media? Alexis smiled faintly, her composure unshaken. I think the attention is warranted. What happened that day is a reflection of a larger problem, one that extends far beyond Regent & Co. But instead of shying away from it, we've chosen to confront it head-on. Diane nodded. Some have called your response overzealous, even performative. How do you respond to those criticisms? Alexis leaned forward slightly, her tone unwavering. Actions speak louder than words. We're not just talking about change, we're implementing it. From new training programs to revised policies, we're making real, measurable progress. And I invite anyone who doubts our sincerity to come see it for themselves. The interview continued, with Alexis addressing tough questions about accountability, corporate culture, and her vision for the future. By the time it aired, public opinion began to shift. People who had been skeptical of Regent & Co's efforts started to see the genuine change taking place. Back at the Soho store, the atmosphere was slowly transforming. Employees who had initially resisted the training sessions were beginning to embrace the new culture. Maya, the young cashier, started mentoring newer employees, sharing what she'd learned about empathy and customer service. Even Chloe, once the symbol of the store's flaws, had become a surprising advocate for change. She approached Alexis one afternoon, visibly nervous. Ms. Monroe, Chloe said, I just wanted to say thank you for giving me a second chance. I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. Alexis regarded her for a moment, then nodded. That's all I ask. Chloe, keep trying. As Alexis left the store that day, a sense of cautious optimism settled over her. The tide was turning, but she knew there was still more to do. Change was a journey, not a destination, and for Alexis Monroe, the journey was just beginning. Months had passed since the infamous incident at Regent & Co's Soho store. What had begun as a humiliating experience for Alexis Monroe had grown into a company-wide transformation. Her unwavering commitment to change had reshaped the culture within Regent & Co, creating ripples far beyond its doors. The shift was palpable. Employees now carried themselves with a renewed sense of purpose. Customer service had become more than just a transaction, it was a relationship. Regular customers who once felt excluded now walked into Regent & Co stores with smiles on their faces, greeted warmly by staff trained to value every interaction. At the Soho store, Maya had blossomed into a leader, unofficially mentoring her peers on handling sensitive situations. Chloe, once a symbol of the problem, had undergone a remarkable turnaround. She spearheaded an initiative called Empathy in Action, where employees shared stories about their own experiences with bias and judgment. Even Evan, the store manager, had embraced his role as a change agent. He met with Alexis regularly to update her on progress, ensuring that the changes extended to every level of the store. This isn't just a job anymore, Evan told Alexis during one of their meetings. It's a chance to make a real impact. Alexis smiled, pleased with the progress but aware there was still much to do. The broader public began to notice the transformation. Regent & Co launched a marketing campaign titled Beyond Luxury, highlighting the company's commitment to inclusivity. Ads featured diverse faces, customers and employees alike, sharing stories of how Regent & Co had become a place where they felt valued. One particularly moving commercial showcased Maya helping an elderly customer navigate the self-checkout system. Her warmth and patience embodied the new culture Alexis had worked so hard to instill. The tagline read, "Luxury isn't just what we sell. It's how we make you feel." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Sales at Regent and Company rebounded, surpassing pre-incident levels, and customer satisfaction surveys showed a dramatic improvement. One evening, Alexis received a call from Diane Parker, the journalist who had interviewed her months earlier. Diane invited her to speak at a national conference on corporate responsibility. "Your story has inspired so many, Alexis," Diane said. "This is your chance to show other companies what's possible." The conference was held at a grand convention center in Washington, D.C. Leaders from industries across the country gathered to discuss the role of businesses in creating social change. Alexis took the stage to a standing ovation. She paused for a moment, scanning the room before speaking. "Thank you," she began, her voice steady and confident. "A year ago, I stood in one of my own stores, accused of theft in front of my niece. It was humiliating, but it was also a turning point." She shared the story of what happened that day, the changes Regent and Company had made, and the challenges they faced along the way. "This isn't just about one company or one incident," Alexis continued. "It's about what happens when we stop seeing each other through the lens of assumptions and start seeing each other as people." Her speech concluded with a call to action, to every leader in this room. I challenge you to examine your own organizations. Ask yourself, are you building a culture of inclusion? Are you fostering respect at every level? Because the truth is, we have the power to lead, not just with our profits, but with our principles. The applause was thunderous. Alexis left the stage feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. Her story had resonated, but more importantly, it had sparked something greater, a movement. Back at Regent and Company, Alexis was greeted with a surprise. Maya, Chloe, and Evan had organized a celebration to honor her leadership. The Soho store was filled with employees and customers alike, all there to express their gratitude. Maya stepped forward, holding a framed photograph. It was a candid shot of Alexis hugging Lily on the day of the incident, with the words, "Thank you for believing in us," etched below it. Alexis was visibly moved. "This isn't about me," she said, addressing the crowd. "It's about all of us. Every step we take together is a step toward a brighter future, for Regent and Company and beyond." That evening, as Alexis sat in her office reviewing reports, Lily entered the room holding a small notebook. "Auntie Lex, can I show you something?" Lily asked excitedly. "Of course, sweetheart," Alexis replied, setting her work aside. Lily opened the notebook to reveal a series of crayon drawings. One showed Regent and Company's logo surrounded by smiling faces. Another depicted Alexis standing tall on a stage, speaking to a crowd. "This is you," Lily explained, pointing to the drawing. "You're teaching everyone to be kind." Alexis's heart swelled with emotion. She pulled Lily into a tight hug. "Thank you, Lily. You remind me every day why this work is so important." As the year drew to a close, Regent and Company had become more than a luxury brand. It was a beacon of change, a testament to what could happen when leaders chose courage over complacency. Alexis stood in her office, looking out at the New York City skyline. The journey had been difficult, filled with resistance, doubt, and moments of despair, but as she reflected on how far they'd come, she felt an unshakable sense of purpose. This was more than a redemption story. It was a legacy in the making. And for Alexis Monroe, it was only the beginning. The story of Alexis Monroe isn't just about a single moment of injustice, it's about the power of standing up, speaking out, and driving meaningful change. Her journey reminds us that real transformation doesn't come from avoiding discomfort but from facing it head-on with courage and integrity. Alexis turned humiliation into purpose and built a legacy that inspires us all to rethink how we treat one another. In a world that often judges too quickly and listens too little, we all have a role to play in creating a kinder, more inclusive society. Whether in our workplaces, our communities, or even in the small interactions of daily life, we have the power to make others feel seen, respected, and valued. As you reflect on Alexis's story, ask yourself, how do I approach others who are different from me? What small changes can I make to challenge assumptions and foster respect in my own life? The lesson here is simple yet profound. A better world begins with each of us, one step at a time. If this story moved you, inspired you, or even made you think differently, we encourage you to subscribe to our channel. By subscribing, you'll join a growing community of people who care about meaningful stories, stories that challenge, inspire, and connect us all. Hit the subscribe button now. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you'll never miss another incredible story. Together, let's continue exploring tales of resilience, courage, and humanity from across the globe. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.